It's really important when we're going through a diagnosis, when there's some sort of illness, we have that support from our friends, family, and loved ones. It's so beneficial. And I think the COVID pandemic really showed us that loneliness and being separated is detrimental to our health. And this is really why, because there's just a much more sophisticated sort of effect that love has on our bodies and on our immune system.
We're having grand round in the Montgomery Heart and Wellness community. And so welcome everyone. And I'm very pleased to introduce our two guests this evening. Our first expert is Liz Curran. She's a co-director of Radical Remission Project and a holistic cancer health coach. She's an educator and a speaker. She was inspired to become a health coach after caring for a sister who had an aggressive breast cancer diagnosis in 2014. She watched her sister struggle with feeling powerless to aid in her own healing. During that time, Liz believed there had to be a roadmap out of that guide people to play a stronger role in their own healing. Our other guest today, Carla Giroux, co-director of the Radical Remission Project and holistic cancer health coach, educator, and speaker. She's a radical remission survivor living with stable metastatic breast cancer. Karla was originally diagnosed with breast cancer in 2003 and underwent a bilateral mastectomy, chemo, and radiation. 11 years later, in late 2014, she received a metastatic breast cancer diagnosis. The diagnosis did not align with her goal of living to be 100 plus, so she decided to do all that she could to manage this challenge. Karla embarked on a holistic healing journey to help herself regain optimal health and longevity. With her integrative approach to healing, she is blessed to report no evidence of disease since 2016. Her passion has led her to share what she has learned so that everyone with a diagnosis can have a better chance of overcoming the odds.
We're so passionate to share the experiences that we have witnessed, the work that we do, and hope that maybe you'll get a little inspiration from what we want to bring with you to share with you tonight. Well, here they are. Here are our 10 healing factors. And what you'll see, I'll just read through them quickly, and then we're going to go through, Karla and I will just give you a background on each one. First one is having strong reasons for living, or making sure that you have a purpose. The second is empowering yourself. Then we have changing your diet. The fourth you'll see here is taking herbs and supplements, increasing positive emotions, releasing suppressed emotions, following your intuition, increasing social support, having a spiritual connection, and incorporating exercise and movement. So you can see here that none of these require a prescription pad. These are all things that you can do on your own, with the one caveat that from our perspective and the perspective of the radical remission survivors that were researched, herbs and supplements is the one that we recommend be prescribed by a licensed practitioner. So that may or may not be your MD, but it may be someone who is maybe an integrative doctor or someone that is licensed to prescribe herbs and supplements, just because it's very important that they are specific to you and not just your diagnosis. First factor that we will talk about tonight is empowering yourself. And when we talk about this factor, we really focus it on the perspective of how feeling empowered to speak with your medical team of practitioners, your doctors, your functional medicine, your integrative doctors, whoever's on your team, and making sure that you are in the driver's seat. You are the one behind the wheel, driving the car, and everybody else is a passenger. Empowering yourself is really important to embody the confidence and the knowing that you can ask a question that may seem a little bit difficult to ask someone. You can ask why this treatment is the best treatment for you, or is there another option? Things that people typically may not have the confidence to ask their doctor, because culturally we've been trained to kind of just nod and compliantly agree to do as we're asked. We believe that you are the CEO of your health. You are sitting at the head of the boardroom table, and your medical team and healing and support team are all guests at that table. And you decide who gets to go on there. And you also get to decide who is excused from the table. Radically changing your diet. So from the perspective of the radical remission survivors, and again, we're just here to kind of report what the research showed. It does not mean that what you're doing is right or wrong. It's very individual, and it's very important that you feel that you are eating for yourself and your diagnosis. So what came out of the research was everything from, plant-based diet, otherwise known as vegan, all the way through to the high-fat, low-carb kind of keto diet. These diets really ultimately, those are two very different perspectives, right? So what the research showed was that all of these people had half of their plate, and for every meal and every snack was fruits and vegetables. So the common denominator was eating from the earth and reducing or eliminating meat, in some cases portion size, wheat and processed foods, sweets, refined sugars, and dairy. They reduced or eliminated based on which type of diet they were following, and they just made sure that they were having clean filtered water and that they really went heavy on the veggies. What a beautiful picture, right? Doesn't that feel like you are releasing just looking at that? Releasing suppressed emotions, this factor revolves around energy blockages. So when we have negative feelings or stuck energy, it gets stuck in our bodies and we need to release that. And suppressed emotions are not always considered negative emotions. They're just suppressed. So for example, someone who may be living in the past, living in a period of time where they are wishing that they could go back to, I remember the good old days of fill in the blank. It could be when they were on a sports team, when they were young, before they had responsibility. Living in the past is nostalgia, gets stuck in our bodies. When we can't let go of that and be present on where we are today, then it's considered suppressed. So allowing ourselves to release where we were and where we have been and be present where we are today, as well as releasing negative emotions. And this one, there are countless ways that this will show up for people with just as many remedies, everything from energy therapy and acupuncture and speaking with a psychotherapist, having support groups. So it really depends on where you are with this, but this is kind of the one that stress reduction falls under. Okay, using herbs and supplements. We touched on this briefly. Again, this is the one that we say should be monitored by a licensed practitioner. But what comes up in the research is that there is no one herb or supplement that is magical and going to heal everyone, but they fell into three categories. So the categories were immune boosting. So some people had some immune issues that needed boosting. Some were detoxifying or removing something from their bodies. And then also helping with nutritional deficiencies or difficulty with absorption. So things around nutritional supplements. So these are the three categories, but what's important and why you want to work with a licensed practitioner is to get individualized testing. So find out what your sensitivities are, what your deficits are through blood testing, through saliva testing. If you work with a naturopath, they may even just tell you to stick out your tongue and read your tongue. So a variety of ways that things can be tested depending on the type of practitioner you go to. But ultimately making sure that they are testing you and then prescribing the supplements that match what your needs are. And following intuition will be my last, and then I'll pass it over to Karla. Following your intuition for me is one of my absolute favorites to teach because the research is phenomenal. Some of the things that you learn about when you do research on intuition or when you read about the research on intuition is, places like Cornell University have done testing that is so conclusive that the intuitive parts of our body are ultimately very present, whether we're aware of it or not. Is really interesting stuff. And we share a lot about that in the workshop. The research studies show that is housed in our gut and that there are as many neurons in our gut as there are in our brain. And so those are not communicating with each other They're communicating independently of each other. So you might have a stomach ache from something that's making you nervous or anxious, but up here you feel fine because you're, logical, you're powering through, and you're just going to get through, giving a speech or talking to somebody that you're in conflict with. So letting your brain and your gut try to align so that they can understand each other, and allow yourself the space to hear what your intuition is trying to tell you. And in today's world, we often have a lot of distractions. Our world is operating at a very fast pace. We have our phones in hand. We have, people texting us. We have people on social media. We have people in our lives. We're getting phone calls. So we're getting hit from people in every direction. And it's really important to find quiet and find time to listen. And some ways that people can access their intuition, it may be through meditation, it may be through journaling.
So moving along to increasing social support. This is all about accepting love and support from others. So we know that the Radical Remission survivors all described receiving love and support as something very different than giving love and support. And we can clearly see that there's a difference. And you can be good at one, and we're usually good at giving, right? Most of us, and maybe not so good at the other, at receiving. So we know that when we're ill and our loved ones are doing things for us, right? They're there to help us. Maybe they're bringing a glass of water or a blanket or pillow or making us soup, whatever it might be. Those are practical ways that our loved ones are supporting us. And the researchers have found that our loved ones also support us in a more sophisticated way. When we are surrounded by the love and support of our loved ones, friends, family, including our pets, the feeling of being loved releases that flood of potent hormones into the bloodstream, which not only feels good, it also strengthens the immune system significantly. So next up is increasing positive emotions. This is about learning ways to boost your happiness. So when we feel happy and loving, our physical bodies are flooded again with those good hormones, those cancer-fighting immune cells. And the Radical Remission survivors all said that they worked diligently to find ways to increase the amount of joy and happiness that they felt in the present moment. And they recommended that we think of it as a muscle, like Liz mentioned before about intuition. It requires a daily workout, but it's only a 5-minute a day workout that will do you some good. And the more that you do it, the more likely you're going to feel better and be able to do it more often. And we're all human. We're going to have the negative emotions. We're going to feel bad. We're going to have a down day, and that's okay. Well, just as long as you keep trying to find your 5 minutes of joy and happiness. Next up is deepening your spiritual connection. So this is all about a connection practice, whatever your practice might be. And it's not necessarily about religion. You might be religious and spiritual. You might be spiritual and not religious. You might be one or the other, or, whatever it is. It's about deepening your spiritual connection with or without religion. Ultimately, it's about connecting in a meaningful way with something bigger than yourself, right? This can be done through art, through music, through nature, any activity that puts you in a state of flow and maybe even in awe. Next up is increasing our exercise and movement. So this is about bringing more movement and physical activity in our lives. And so it's really any type of physical movement. It could be gardening, just walking, maybe your physical therapy. Sometimes it's just, I'm moving from one room to the next this day, and I'm going to walk around the house the next day, and I'm going to go out to the porch the next day and down the end of the block the next. Adding on to the movement until you can build up enough strength is really important. And we know from numerous studies that exercise is essential to long-term remission. So the last factor we'll talk about is strong reasons for living. And having strong reasons for living is different than fighting off death. One elicits joy while the other elicits fear. you've probably figured out by now that being in a joyful state of mind is going to be better for you than being in a fearful state of mind. We want the rest and repair mode and the happy hormones to be doing as much good for our immune system as possible. And so it's not so much about the fear of dying as it is about the zest for living. And so they emphasize that the desire to live really does need to come from that deepest core of your being. And it has to be an unquestioning, unwavering conviction that, yes, I want to keep living.
Well, I'm impressed and I'm excited about our future opportunities to add this as a modality in terms of at least referring people, but also bringing some of this expertise into what we do. Liz, Karla, this is not the last time you'll hear from us. So
We welcome it.
Thank you for the great work that you're doing. And again, thank you again for giving us a great presentation tonight. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure our audience has learned a lot as well. So
Thank
Thank
you.
you
Thanks,
so
Dr.
much.
Montgomery. You keep up the good work too.
Yes.
thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank
Yeah.
Thank you.